Honorable members, the Honorable Mr. President,
Honorable colleagues, dear invited guests, I now invite you to observe a minute of silence for prayer or meditation.
Merci.
Thank you.
Let us all unite and celebrate together the victor song for our liberation. Let us dedicate ourselves to rise together to defend our liberty and unity. Oh, fils et filles de l'Afrique, chers du soleil, chers du ciel, faisons de l'Afrique la belle de vie. Let us all unite and sing together to uphold the bonds that frame our destiny. Let us dedicate ourselves to fight together for lasting peace and justice only. Oh, filhos, filhas da África, essência do sol, essência do céu, façamos da África a rua da vida. Let us all unite and talk together to give the best we have to Africa. The cradle of mankind, the fount of culture, our pride and hope and break of dawn. Ya amna wa balat Africa, lubu assumption, dedu sama. Africa shajahatu ayat.
Chers collègues,
Honorable colleagues, in accordance with the provisions of our rules of procedure, it gives me the pleasure to invite our following guests into the chamber. His Excellency, Honorable Sylvia de Mesebo, former member of the Pan-African Parliament, former Minister of Zambia. Honorable, please enter the chamber. Her Excellency Honorable Bethel Amondi, Ambassador, Goodwill Ambassador of the Pan-African Parliament.
Honorable Dr. Gayo,
Honorable Dr. Gayo Ashadir, Honorary Vice President of the Pan-African Parliament.
Dr. Ibrahim Assa,
Dr. Ibrahim Asai Mayaki, Executive Direct Secretary of NEPAD.
Honorable Sylvia Mazebo,
Honorable Sylvia Masebo, former member of the Pan-African Parliament. Honorable Sylvia Masebo, please enter the chamber.
Son Excellence Arikane
His Excellency Arekane Shihumbira, Permanent Representative of the African Union to the United States.
Son Excellence Philippe Baker,
His Excellency Philip Baker, Ambassador of Canada to Ethiopia and Permanent Representative to the African Union.
Ambassadeur Brelanche,
Ambassador Brilliant Chetunge, Ambassador for Food Security.
Sa Majesté King
His Majesty His Majesty King Bongane III, King of the Amaglubi from Mpumalanga. His Majesty King Bongane III. Her Excellency Honorable Mariam Jack Denyon, Speaker of the National Assembly of the Gambia. His Excellency Honorable Mariam Jack Denyon, Speaker of the National Assembly of the Gambia. Professor Eddie Maluka, Executive Director. From the APRM.
Monsieur Andreas,
Mr. Andreas Bumel,
Son Excellence,
His Excellency Honorable Majak Denyon, Speaker of the National Assembly of the Republic of Gambia, His Majesty King Bongane III, King of the Amatlubi from Mpumalanga, ladies and gentlemen, Vice Presidents of the Pan-African Parliament, Your Excellency Madame Marikana Shumbiri, Permanent Representative of the African Union to the United States, Your Excellency Mr. Philip Baker, Ambassador of Canada to Ethiopia and Permanent Representative to the African Union, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, ambassadors, high commissioners, and representatives of international organizations accredited to the Republic of South Africa, Dr. Ibrahim Hassan Mayaki, Executive Secretary of NEPAD, Professor Idi Maluka, Director General of the Secretariat of the APRM, Honorable Bete Amadi, former President of the Pan-African Parliament and Goodwill Ambassador, Honorable Dr. Gayo Ashu, Honorary Vice President of the Pan-African Parliament, Honorable Sylvia Masebo, former member of the Pan-African Parliament and former Minister of the Republic of Zambia, Honorable Members of Parliament, Honorable Dr. Chitunge, Ambassador for Food Security, distinguished invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is with great pleasure that I welcome each and every one of you this morning to Midrand, South Africa, the seat of our parliament. It is from the bottom of my heart that I wish you most welcome to this chamber called Dr. Idris Ndeli Musa, the mouthpieces of the people of Africa, friendly countries and development partners of the African continent. As an African, it is my duty to recognize the presence of traditional authorities embodied by King King Bongane III, who decided to share this moment with us, the people of Africa. In fact, following the Yaoundé conference, we have decided on a functional integration in Africa through inclusion and implication of civil society, but also traditional leaders. You have chosen to come and meet the elected representatives of Africa. I know how busy your schedule is, and therefore I am very grateful that you are gracing us with your presence. I would also like to sincerely thank national parliaments who, under difficult financial conditions, have enabled their members of parliament to discharge their mission, which is to speak on behalf of the people of Africa. Before I continue, let me pay a tribute to those who have passed on. On 19 August, the Honorable Dr. Salif Diallo was the Speaker of the National Assembly of Burkina Faso, a politician and emblematic figure of African politics. He left us while we were still needing his assistance. In addition, the scourge of terrorism has cut the life short of a lot of Africans on this continent. Every day in Burkina Faso, Cameroon, Egypt, Mali, Niger, Nigeria, Somalia, Kenya, and Chad, Africa is paying a high toll, losing human lives due to constant attacks, and the youth are recruited among the ranks of terrorist groups. This is compounded by the perverse impact of climate change, with landslides, the most deadly recently in Sierra Leone, causing more than 1,000 dead and casualties. Excellencies, with your permission, I call on the Assembly to rise and for a minute of silence, honoring the sons and daughters of Africa.
Je vous remercie.
Thank you for this sign of solidarity. Your Excellencies, as announced, I welcome Honorable Betel Amadi Nameka, former President of the Pan-African Parliament and a goodwill ambassador of our institution. Once again, as the Almighty wanted, we all knew the ambassador, this physically strong man, but he had recovered from a long period of illness, and I call on him and I hope that he will fully recover.
L'actualité africaine de ces derniers.
The news in Africa lately has been marked by elections in Algeria, Angola, the Congo, Kenya, Rwanda, and Senegal. This is a sign of the vitality and the progress of democracy on our continent. And we have the privilege here to congratulate all of those who were elected and welcome those who are joining us. These elections have enabled the renewal of the members of the Pan-African Parliament. Your Excellencies, honorable members of Parliament, invited guests, before I address the topics related to the session per se, let me point out some highlights of the agenda. Allow me to inform the honorable members of the Pan-African Parliament of the increased security arrangements made by the Republic of South Africa, host country of our institution. Therefore, we recommend all members of Parliament not to go out without informing the security services, or not to leave your hotels alone. On my behalf and on behalf of all the members of the Pan-African Parliament, we would like to extend our gratitude to the Republic of South Africa for its close collaboration with the Pan-African Parliament. Since our previous meeting in August, the Pan-African Parliament has once again shown that the intercession period was full with events. We've conducted several activities in collaboration with the government and the Parliament of Cameroon, the African Union Commission, regional parliaments, regional economic committees and commissions, and the government on 22 to 26 August organized a continental conference on the theme Political and Socio-Economic Integration of the African Continent, the role of the Pan-African Parliament. Under the esteemed patronage of His Excellency Paul Biya, President of the Republic, and under the supervision of His Excellency Musa Mohammed, Chairperson of the African Union Commission, represented by His Excellency Thomas Kwasi, Deputy Chairperson of the Commission, we have over 4 days discussed the issue of integration of the African continent. In addition, the Pan-African Parliament continued its advocacy missions throughout the continent, traveling to various countries. Dear colleagues, I would also most warmly thank the authorities of Cameroon who have displayed typical African hospitality by hosting our conference in Yaoundé and ensuring our security. Before we address the fifth ordinary session opening today, from this rostrum of the people of Africa, let me say that the Pan-African Parliament has made significant progress thanks to the efforts of each and everyone, the efforts of the members of Parliament, the Secretariat, the staff, and the various members. This efforts culminated in a great triumph, the lifting of sanctions on our continent, in particular those against Sudan. The United States of America, the American Congress, voted in favor of lifting these sanctions after a 2-week visit led by the President of the Parliament, where we were advocating among the members of the American Congress. While we are celebrating this African victory, we would like to deplore the fact that Chad was included in the countries posing a threat. As we know, Chad is making significant efforts in combating terrorism. We would dare to hope that the United States of America will consider this decision and postpone that and come back on that decision for the betterment of Africa. I take this opportunity to thank all of those who have traveled with us and reassure my colleagues of the Parliament. The work that will start today is following the work of the committees in August. In each of our committees, we should participate fully and contribute so that we can continue our progress to a better future. I also extend my gratitude to all the staff of the Pan-African Parliament for the efforts made to make our work smoothly. Finally, let me thank the Republic of South Africa for all the efforts made to enable us to work in good conditions. Long live Africa, long live the Pan-African Parliament, long live the African Union. One Africa, one voice. I thank you for your kind attention.
Asante sana, shukran, gracias, obrigado.
Dear colleagues, the fifth ordinary session of the fourth Parliament is called to order. Mr. Clerk, I now give you the floor to read the second item on our order of business.
Honorable members, for the swearing in of new members of the Pan-African Parliament, the Honorable President invites to the podium, first from Burundi, Honorable Gelase Daniel Ndabirabe.
L'ordre du jour appelle la prestation de...
We will now have the new members take the oath. You can now take the office before the representatives of the African people.
Moi,
I, Honorable Shelas Daniel Debloyabe, member of the Pan-African Parliament, hereby solemnly declare before the people of Africa and before God to perform my functions as a member of the Pan-African Parliament to the best of my ability and with honor and dignity in the service of the people of Africa, to be faithful and bear true allegiance to the African Union and preserve, protect and defend the Constitutive Act of the African Union and the protocol to the treaty establishing the African Economic Community relating to the Pan-African Parliament as by law established, and promote adherence to the principles of good governance, democracy, human rights, international humanitarian law, peace, stability, and all objectives of the Pan-African Parliament. So help me God.
The Honorable President invites to the podium the following delegation from the Kingdom of Lesotho. Honorable Me Poipone Emile Sinawane. Honorable Troy Alice Musamai. Honorable Ndatekose Julius Makoa. Honorable Ndatetabo Joseph Soponea.
L'ordre du jour appelle la prestation.
Now we will have the new members from Lesotho take the oath. Dear colleagues, please take the oath.
I, Nkoi Motsamai, solemnly declare that I will perform my functions as a member of the Pan-African Parliament to the best of my ability and with honor and dignity in the service of the peoples of Africa. I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to the African Union and will preserve, protect, and defend the Constitutive Act of the African Union and the protocol to the treaty establishing the African Economic Community relating to the Pan-African Parliament as by law established. And I will promote adherence to the principles of good governance, democracy, human rights, international humanitarian law, peace, stability, and all objectives of the Pan-African Parliament. So help me God.
The Honorable President invites to the podium the following delegation from Somalia. Honorable Idris Abdi Takta. Honorable Mrs. Yasmin Hussein Mohammed. Honorable Lutfi Sharif Mohammed Omer. Honorable Abdi Hakim Mualim Ahmad Malin.
L'ordre du jour appelle la prestation de serment.
In the agenda, we have the taking of oath by Somalia. Dear colleagues, you have the floor.
I, Lutfi Sharif Mohammed, hereby swear solemnly declare that I will perform my functions as a member of Pan-African Parliament to the best of my ability and with honor and dignity in the service of the peoples of Africa. I will be faithful and pure through allegiance to the African Union and will preserve, protect, and defend the Constitutive Act of the African Union and the Protocol to the Treaty of Establishing the African Economic Community relating to the Pan-African Parliament as by laws established. I will promote adherence to the principles of good governance, democracy, human rights, international humanitarian law, peace, stability, and all objectives of Pan-African Parliament. So help me Allah.
That will be the full list of new members being sworn in today. Thank you, honorable members. Thank you, Your Excellency.
Chers collègues,
Dear colleagues, the Pan-African Parliament is showing an increasing level of vitality. To this effect, dignitaries around the world come here to show their solidarity. Here, allow me to say that this ceremony and taking into account the time allotted to us in this ceremony, we are going to have we have 4 messages of solidarity as follows. His Excellency Ambassador Arikane he can do it tomorrow. Dr. Ibrahim Asani Mayaki, thank you. His Excellency Philip Baker, Ambassador of Canada in Ethiopia and Permanent Representative to the African Union. I would like to invite you to give your message of solidarity.
Excellency, President of the Pan-African Parliament, Honorable Roger Nkodo Diang, Dr. Mayaki, fellow speakers, Excellencies of the Pan-African Parliament, members, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. Bon dia, sabah el khair, bonjour, jambo, good morning. It's my great pleasure and honor to address you here today. A big thank you to you and President Dang for the invitation, and also for my good friend Ato Hodorfa, Ethiopian Member of Parliament, for initiating it. I serve as Canada's ambassador to Ethiopia, Djibouti, and the African Union, but this year I also serve as the co-chair of the African Union Partners Group, or AUPG. I've also served as Canada's High Commissioner to Mozambique, Malawi, and Swaziland, as well as 5 years as our Director General for Africa, so I have a very, very deep passion for the continent and for its people. As you well know, Canada and African nations have cultivated strong, dynamic, and mutually reinforcing relationships for generations. We work together in bilateral partnership, as well as through regional and international bodies such as the United Nations, the African Union, the Commonwealth, and La Francophonie. Through our cooperation, we have achieved great things. Our relationship is rooted in solid people-to-people ties and based on mutual respect, cooperation, and partnership. This relationship, of course, is not a one-way street. Africans who visit and come to live in Canada enrich Canada's diversity and strengthen the multicultural nature and social fabric of our country. In 2014 alone, over 32,000 Africans migrated to Canada. Moreover, in 2016, nearly 28,000 students from Africa enrolled in university programs in Canada. And our universities are greatly enriched by many visiting professors from Africa, teaching our youth not only in the field of African studies, but also in highly specialized fields such as biology, chemistry, and engineering. Throughout the years, Canada has tried to be a committed and reliable partner to Africa. Que seja quando lutamos contra o apartheid na África do Sul, através de nossas contribuições às operações.
We've supported the peace in the continent, and also we mobilized political and financial support to fight against climate change, malaria, and tuberculosis.
Le plus important partenaire.
Canada wishes to pursue its relationship and its commitment to its African countries.
To partner with Africa on key issues of importance to us all, including strengthening rules-based international order, contributing to global peace and stability, and empowering women and girls, all with the goal of better economic and social prosperity for all Africans. First, let me talk about our common quest to strengthen international institutions. We all know of Africa's impressive economic and population growth. Extreme poverty has declined significantly. Millions of individuals have joined the middle class. The number of conflicts has decreased. And democracy, good governance, and respect for human rights are widely shared values across the continent. To build on this progress, sustained effort led by African countries in lockstep with their partners will be required to take on emerging global challenges. À cet égard, le Canada est à l'écoute de...
Canada is listening to its African partners at the level of the United Nations, the African Union, or at the level of the Commonwealth. We are ready to cooperate with you. We strongly support the African Union in its vision for an Africa that is prosperous and peaceful. For these reasons, Canada recently renewed its support to this important organization by giving a contribution of 5 million Canadian dollars. This contribution aims at promoting the efforts to promote gender equality, good governance, to face climate change, and to promote trade integration.
For example, as co-chair of the African Union's Partners Group, we're helping to foster a constructive and effective two-way dialogue between the AU Commission and its partners. We're also eager to work closely with you on the UN Security Council reform and to ensure a better balance and geographical representation in the Security Council, especially for African countries. You may know that Canada is a candidate for a seat on the United Nations Security Council for 2021-22. Our bid demonstrates our firm commitment to renew our multilateral engagement. We are a candidate because we believe that we can make a difference and that we can make an important contribution to making the world safer and more prosperous. We're aware of the need to work hand in hand with Africa, not only to find solutions to the challenges of the continent, but also those affecting the globe. This is why we're committed to working with African countries to ensure that your views and your perspectives are heard and respected.
As regards climate change, the international mobilization and cooperation are necessary if we wish to avoid a planetary catastrophe. This is what the African continent showed by adopting concerted decisions during the Conference of the Parties in Paris.
Assuming a leadership role to respond to the challenge. African countries such as Ethiopia, which adopted its climate-resilient green economy strategy, are examples for the rest of the world. Canada will respect its commitments from the Paris Agreement. We are also committed to supporting the poorest and most vulnerable countries in adapting to the adverse impacts of climate change and to achieve sustained emission reductions. Canada is very serious about climate change and has dedicated an unprecedented amount, $2.65 billion by 2021, to help partners build climate resilience and a low-carbon future. Our contributions to the Africa Renewable Energy Initiative, the African Risk Capacity Agency, and the Least Developed Countries Fund are also key components of our commitment.
As regards world peace and stability, Africa and Canada share the same vision, as indicated in the Agenda 2063, and also in line with the developments of sustainable development. Canada recognizes the link between stability, governance. Africa fully fulfilled its obligations to face this challenge by contributing in an exemplary manner in peace efforts.
This requires a dynamic and multifaceted approach, including capacity building, conflict prevention, peacekeeping, mediation, and post-conflict reconstruction. And Canada sees a strong role for women in all of these elements. Since 2008, Canada has contributed more than $200 million to security-related programming in Africa. As our Prime Minister Justin Trudeau reiterated recently, Canada intends to increase its engagement in the full spectrum of multilateral peace operations. As part of our commitment and to further encourage peace operations reform, we will be hosting the next meeting of defense ministers on UN peace operations in Vancouver, Canada in November of this year. We hope the meeting will help us achieve concrete outcomes that will benefit peace operations here in Africa. We also strongly value the effort of the African Union and regional economic communities to take a greater role in responding to the continent's security challenges and welcome closer cooperation between the AU and the UN systems. Last but certainly not least, I'd like to highlight our cooperation on the empowerment of women and girls. Canada recently launched a new feminist foreign policy, which includes a feminist international assistance policy. This new policy places gender equality and the empowerment of women and girls at the heart of our international assistance efforts, a significant shift in what we do and how we do it. We did this because, as the policy states, this is the right thing to do and the smart thing to do if we are serious about helping to reduce poverty and inequality. We must ensure that women and girls are heard across all of our political, development, commercial, and security efforts. This approach is not new to African partners. The African Union has been a pioneer in this regard and has continuously prioritized gender equality and women's empowerment as a strategic objective of its long-term vision for sustainable development, peace, and security. Canada has a great appreciation for African leadership on these issues. Examples include countries such as Zambia, which led international efforts on child and early forced marriage, and Rwanda, which has over 60% women parliamentarians. Hence, it's natural that our new policy recognizes the importance of sub-Saharan Africa by ensuring that no less then 50% of Canada's international bilateral assistance will be directed towards this region by 2021. And we're already hitting that every year right now. Already, some concrete commitments have been announced. For example, Canada will provide $650 million over 3 years across the globe to improve sexual and reproductive health and rights for all. In addition, Canada will also provide $150 million over 5 years to support local women's rights organizations and movements in developing countries. We must ensure gender equality and rights for women and girls. It just makes sense. The last and perhaps most important point I would like to make is about diversity and inclusivity. As Justin Trudeau says, and we hope to have him back on the continent here soon, diversity, not as a challenge to be overcome or a difficulty to be tolerated, but as a source of tremendous strength. Now more than ever, the world needs to draw on that strength. Canada is a diverse place. People have noticed that diversity reflected in our cabinet and in our parliament. Our cabinet is half women and includes a former Somali refugee, a former Afghan refugee, 4 Sikhs, a person with physical disabilities, and an Aboriginal lawyer. This diversity extends across our government. Thank you. That is what Canada looks like, and we are stronger for it. We are stronger culturally, politically, economically, because of our diversity, not in spite of it. And Africa shares this amazing diversity. As our Prime Minister said in his recent speech at the United Nations General Assembly, in the face of complex global challenges, Canada will continue to champion diversity, acceptance, passion on the world stage. We cannot build a better world unless we work together, respect our differences, protect the vulnerable, and put people at the heart of the decisions we make. Asante sana, thank you, shukran, obrigado, merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Africa takes due note of all the good intentions of Canada, and we thank you very much for this. Dear colleagues, as it is part of our tradition, our ex-colleagues who visit us have the right for a few minutes to share their solidarity with us. Here, I wish to invite His Excellency Amadi Betel, ex-president or former president of the Pan-African Parliament, to take the floor. Your Excellency, Ambassador, you have the floor.
Your Excellency, President of the Pan-African Parliament, my friend, my brother, the Right Honorable Roger Nkoda-Dang, Your Excellencies, members of the Bureau of the Pan-African Parliament, honorable members of Parliament, our distinguished invited guests, members of the Diplomatic Corps, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it's a great honor and pleasure for me to be back here in the hallowed chambers of the Pan-African Parliament. I've been asked by the President that it would be very unparliamentary for me to visit the Parliament after my tenure here without saying a few words to my brothers, sisters, friends and colleagues of the Pan-African Parliament. I'm honored to be here, and I can see that this is home. I feel a very strong sense of welcome and a lot of nostalgia from the years that I spent here in this Parliament. For the things that we achieved, I thank God, but I can see that under the leadership of the current President, many steps and improvements have been made even in these chambers. I must congratulate you members for keeping the flag flying. This parliament is a very important institution for the African people. And it's only many years after I left office that I came to realize the full impact and size and importance of this institution and the great work that we have to do for our continent. I have in the last 1 year undergone serious health challenges. But due to the grace of God and the prayers and support of many of you, my friends and brothers from this Pan-African Parliament, and of course even the Secretariat of our Parliament, I have overcome tremendous health challenges. And today I can stand before you and say that thanks to God, I'm fully recovered. And it is when you have challenges like I had that you realize the depth of challenges that our people on our continent face on a daily basis, in terms of their food security, in terms of health care, in terms of education, and of course, the issue of security challenges. Boko Haram is still inflicting damages in my country, Nigeria. You still have all the other crises that are hampering and hindering development in various parts of Africa. And it is our role as parliamentarians to ensure that we continue to intervene. I have been uplifted by knowledge of the fact that those who are sitting today in this parliament will continue this great work, continue to spread the vision for which our parliament was established, which is to ensure that the voice and the issues concerning the African people are put the front burner of national discourse and continental discourse. I wish you God's speed. I wish you the very best. We will continue to be part of you from wherever we are, from whatever we're doing. We will continue to make sure that this institution grows from strength to strength. We will continue to work to support the work that you do here and to ensure that you're given the required legislative functions and powers that you need to work for the people of Africa. Thank you very much. God bless you and have a wonderful session.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much, President. It is with a great deal of emotion that I see you once again. I hope that you will always be in good shape. I would like to invite Dr. Gayo to give his message of solidarity.
His Excellency, Pan-African Parliament, President of Pan-African Parliament, Honorable Nikodum, Excellencies, Bureau members, Excellencies, members of Pan-African Parliament, diplomatic corps, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great honor to me to be with you here, to be part and parcel of Pan-African Parliament. Thank you for the invitation, Your Excellency, Mr. President. I do remember during our tenure, we rendered service for people of Africa. This time, we can see you have become a real voice of African people. I can see what you have done for Sudan to lift the embargo, and really this big challenge. It was a big challenge for the continent. The head of the states tried their best, but they didn't make it. Congratulations to you, Your Excellency, Mr. President. Keep this momentum. The Pan-African Parliament should be the voice of people of Africa. For me personally, I'm a very lucky guy to be an Ethiopian. always, I can understand. Everybody who left Pan-African Parliament can miss always your love, your humility, your friendship. Fortunately, as an Ethiopian, when you are coming to Ethiopia, I'm lucky to receive you. I'm lucky to talk to you, to chat on phone with you. It's a big privilege for us as Ethiopian. It's your second home. Keep on coming, and we are ready to receive you. We are ready to work you. And thanks to Pan-African Parliament President, when he come to Ethiopia, he always include me in the list of delegation, and I was privileged to be at the Assembly of Head of States. And I feel always I'm part of Pan-African Parliament. You never abandon me, and I will not let you down. I'll work with you. Thank you so much for invitation, Your Excellency. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Vice-Président.
Thank you very much, Deputy President. Now, I would like to invite Honorable Sylvia Masebo from the Zambia. Sylvia Masebo.
Your Excellency, the President of the Pan-African Parliament, Honorable Roger Gondodang, Honorable Vice Presidents of the Pan-African Parliament, Honorable Members of the Bureau, Honorable Members of Pan-African Parliament, Your Royal Highnesses, Your Excellencies, Members of the Diplomatic Corps, distinguished invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed an honor and privilege for me to be granted this rare opportunity to deliver a solidarity message to this session of this distinguished assembly. I'm profoundly proud and elated that this is the same assembly where I once sat as a member. I have been given an opportunity to return and fellowship with you as an alumni, for I'm indeed a proud graduate of this important institution where I draw a lot of experiences that enriched my own country in several ways. I've been here 3 different occasions, and luckily I was also privileged to be a member of the first meeting that constituted, or rather that sought to deal with the initial establishment of the Pan-African Parliament in 2004. I later returned as a member, a full member, after I went back home to be, when I was appointed cabinet minister. I came back the second time as a full member, then I was recalled back again as a cabinet minister. I came back again another time. So I've been coming here and going away. I've been Minister of Local Government and Housing in my country. I've been Minister of Tourism and Arts. I've been Minister of Health. I've also been a member of, an executive member of the political parties in my country. So I've quite a long political history. I started at 25 as deputy mayor for the city of Lusaka. So I find it as a great honor to be remembered by yourselves as members of PAP, and thank you, Mr. President, for your kind invitation. Mr. President, I now wish to extend fraternal greetings from the people of the Republic of Zambia, who express their sincere gratitude and solidarity to this august house that sits in this beautiful city. Mr. President, I look around at the diverse and rich representation of this house from across our continent. I'm ironically reminded of our founding fathers who birthed this idea of Pan-Africanism, many who are no more with us. I'm reminded of the agency to fulfill their shared values, beliefs, visions, and dreams as we also prepare to pass the baton to the next generation of Africans. Kwame Nkrumah, Julius Nyerere, Kenneth Kaunda, and Nelson Mandela are among those that set the pace. They ran their race and gave us the mentor to rewrite our history, reclaim our heritage, redraw our destiny, and redefine who we are and chart our future. The decision is now in our own hands today, this very hour. Mr. President, in redrawing our destiny and reclaiming our history, let us be reminded of what drove and inspired our founding fathers towards these goals. Oppression, colonization, apartheid, and slavery gave way to the painful contractions and eventual birthmarks of freedom, and subsequently to new governance of our nations through our own choices. It is therefore the duty of this distinguished House to teach our people to demand for nothing less than true democracy, true transparency, accountability, full civil liberties, and economic development from their new rulers. Mr. President, I'm gratified that the Pan-African Parliament has a permanent committee on justice and human rights that seeks to assist this institution in advocating for respect within the African Union of the principles, freedom, civil liberties, justice, human and people's rights. This is the time to actualize this set of principles by moving the PAP from being a deliberative body to one that is legislative. Mr. President, it is such a coincidence that the 5th ordinary session of the 4th Parliament of the Pan-African Parliament is being held in the realm of time of the severe, unprecedented, and devastating hurricanes in the Western Hemisphere that have literally raised down and wiped out entire cities in some cases. Mr. President, our prayers and thoughts should go out to the citizens of those countries. Mr. President, climate change is not fake news, to borrow a rather infamous term from one leader. It is a stark reality that calls us to urgent duty by not only seeking answers, but also aggressively addressing certain matters that require change of attitudes and behavioral patterns in the way we handle our planet. A simple bird's eye view as I flew above the skies to here revealed an alarming state of our dwindling forests. The Pan-African Parliament must lead the collective fight and effort in rallying our people and governments on the need to take corrective measures on desertification, degradation, and the destruction of fauna and flora in our vast water bodies around the continent. I'm once more thankful that a permanent committee of Pan-African Parliament on rural economy, agriculture, natural resources, and environment is in place to look at this very serious matter. We as Africans must play our part in this matter, and we must play it now. Mr. President, it is indisputably and abundantly clear that nations that have prioritized women empowerment processes and programs have reaped quicker economic progress than those that drag their feet. Women economic participation is a wider and quicker vehicle as it carries along with it entire family units that translates into the empowerment of entire communities, especially in Africa's rural setups. It is often said, if you empower one woman, you have empowered an entire village. The Pan-African Parliament must seek to ensure that the African governments recognize the critical role women and girl children play in our people's traditional family extended systems. We must therefore stop looking at women as statistical guinea pigs for laboratory research and ending economic experiments. Let's instead get on the hard ground and engage them on heart-to-heart fellowships, and in that way, we'll identify them as spatial and critical tools for empowerment and economic emancipation. Among the immediate needs are affordable housing, access to education that will help them appreciate safe motherhood, reproductive health, and eventual eradication of poverty. Mr. President, I'm reminded of the success story of the nation of Rwanda that has recognized the sanctity of education of women and the youth, and has further availed these groups with access to the technological power of the internet. The result is that more and more women have now entered the ranks of small-scale entrepreneurs, as more and more of them qualify to borrow from banks. These small businesses have potential to grow into big enterprises. That in turn will help grow the wealth of the nation. Mr. President, allow me to address the issue of our rich African wildlife. The committee responsible for tourism must up its game and carry out sustained and concerted efforts in addressing the challenges of poachers that have invaded our wildlife parks around Africa. Mr. President, I'm not referring to the small-scale poachers for the port, but well-organized, well-coordinated international cartels that work in close collaboration with corrupt government officers who have dubiously granted them huge hunting concessions and licenses to kill for massive international trade. If Africa does not wake up to a full realization of the dwindling numbers of our wildlife, this current generation will leave nothing for its children. Mr. President, the evil of commercial poaching must be raised to the same levels of international terrorism and climate change, and Africa must aggressively lead the way in this fight, because approximately over 70% of wildlife is found in our continent. I therefore call upon the Pan-African Parliament to work in close collaboration and liaison with relevant UN wildlife monitoring bodies and other international organizations, NGOs, and wildlife watchdogs, but most importantly with the local populations. Mr. President, let me finally, and in closing, address the issue of the ratification of the Malabo Protocol. I note with sadness that the transformation of the Pan-African Parliament into a fully fledged parliament with legislative powers and with members who are elected by respective countries has not been achieved, because its operationalization is awaiting the ratification of the revised protocol by AU member states. We all remember that the Pan-Africa is not a full parliament, because members of the African Union Executive Council of Foreign Ministers had resolved not to give legislative powers to the PAP. Most of our governments are of the opinion that Africa is not yet ready for a continental parliament with powers to make laws over member states. They contend that the continent is not yet fully integrated. Mr. President, due to this, to the aforementioned decision by the African Union Executive Council of Foreign Ministers, only 5 countries have so far ratified the Malabo Protocol, which was adopted by the 23rd ordinary session of the Assembly held in Malabo, Equatorial Guinea, on the 27th June 2014. It is clear from the rate at which African countries are ratifying the protocol that the Pan-African Parliament and its allies need to do more to lobby heads of states to ratify the protocol to the Constitutive Act of the African Union relating to the Pan-African Parliament. However, I'm happy to note, Mr. President, that you are actively pushing for the ratification of the protocol. Going by your recent visit to Zambia, I'd like to urge you to do more and visit more countries. Mr. President, I'd like at this juncture to also offer my support to you and this Parliament, and I'm declaring my willingness to join you in pushing for the ratification of the Malabo Protocol. I once more wish to express my sincere and profound gratitude for granting me this very rare opportunity and privilege to address this very distinguished House. Thank you. Zikomo Kwambili.
Em primeiro lugar,
first instance, may I greet all those present and our illustrious invited guests, as well as my dear colleagues, members of Parliament. Given the fact that the President of the Pan-African Parliament has to receive our guests of honor, I have been requested to replace him for a while. I would like to start then carrying out my duties by thanking the speech that has been made, and also thanking for the support that has been expressed for the Pan-African Parliament. Right now, I have the privilege of inviting His Excellency Arkane Suho Mbore, Ambassador and Permanent Representative of the African Union in the United States. Mr. Ambassador, you have the floor.
To the President of the Pan-African Parliament, honorable ministers and members of Parliament, members of the Bureau, ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observed. Thank you for having me this morning. Let me start by congratulating all of you for the job well done on lifting of the sanctions on Sudan. I had the privilege of running up and down the hallways of the US Congress with some of your members last week. It was indeed a great honor and a great experience. I have to say, your members were remarkable. I listened to them as we went from one member of Congress to the other, tell their story about their own experience in Sudan. I suppose, should I wait a bit? And let us enjoy the music? I can carry on? I'm told I can carry on. Let me say, the story of Sudan is a story that has touched all of us around the globe. When I listened to the parliamentarians presenting their findings on the ground in Sudan, I couldn't help but, at times, particularly when my sister from Uganda was describing the conditions of the women on the ground, I struggled to hold back the tears. I listened to also the members of Congress express their feelings on what they felt was going on in Sudan. But when it was all said and done, I couldn't help but conclude that we, as the Africans, and all of you, as the Pan-African Parliament, have a responsibility to create the bridge that is so needed to make sure that those who are making decisions on Africa are well informed about what is happening in our Africa. As we went through the halls of Congress, we did our best through the Parliament to explain to them that the divide that exists between Africa and the United States is something that the Parliament must take on as a challenge. We offered every one of the members of Congress that we met an opportunity to come to South Africa and address the Parliament, and I'm here to let you know that resoundingly, all of them accepted the invitation. We took it a step further as well and felt that in my own capacity, having lived in the Americas as long as I have, and also being an African, I find myself repeatedly having to defend Africa because of the ignorance that I see coming from the other side. But at the same time, I also find myself defending the Americans when it came to also what I see coming from my fellow Africans. Along those lines, we were able to also address the issue of the possibility of an MOU being signed between the Pan-African Parliament and the US Congress, and also pretty much every Congress that we met was in agreement that such an agreement was needed. As you all might be aware, there are several issues pertaining to Africa that are coming through Congress every day. And quite often, we wonder, those who are making those decisions, who are voting on issues to do with Africa, how well informed are they? That's also another issue that we tabled with the Congress people as we met with them. We suggested that maybe there should be a committee that should be made that is made up of the Pan-African Parliament members as well as members of Congress, and that this committee maybe could meet 2 or 3 times a year to streamline all the issues to do with Africa that are being brought to Congress. And so the Africans can have an opportunity to address those issues and offer our side of what is really going on the ground. Because quite often, those with the loudest voices and those with the opportunities to be heard are those who are going to be heard. And quite often, sometimes it's opposition that may not necessarily have a balanced view of what's really going on. Also, that idea of a committee between Pan-African Parliament, made up of Pan-African Parliament members and the US Congress, was also very well received. I'm here to say we were well received by the US Congress, and I would like for you to take a moment to congratulate the members of Parliament who represented you all last week as they tried to lobby for sanctions to be lifted on Sudan, and for them as well to say congratulations for a job well done. Could we please give them a round of applause?
One Africa, one voice.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. And I have to say, after they left, I put a few calls to my colleagues in Congress just to thank them for assisting us and facilitating the conversations. But I have to tell you, one thing that came out of it was that everybody was talking about the Africans having come to the Hill. It was not Sudan, it was the Africans. I'm saying this also to underscore the importance of this House, the importance of the Parliament, because when the Parliament arrives, Africa has arrived. It is the beginning of us speaking with one voice, not as individual countries, not as 55 countries, but as Africa. It is the beginning of us beginning to sing that solo, that one song. Not 55 voices, which is chatter, not 1.3 billion voices, which is noise, but one voice, one African voice. So let's come together and sing that song. Birds sing not because they can, they sing because they have a song. We have a song to sing as Africans. Let's come together and sing it as a united front of one Africa and give the world the best melody the world has ever heard. Thank you, African Parliament, for having me.
Caríssimos colegas,
dearest colleagues, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to remind you that in the speech made today by His Excellency the President of the Pan-African Parliament, he mentioned one of our successes, the sanctions against Sudan. I would also like to remind you that this mission was very successful, and only so because of the tremendous contribution of Her Excellency Ambassador Chiyombori, and I would like to thank her for all of efforts and for ensuring that our mission in the United States was successful. And I know she did so because she feels and realizes that as a daughter of Mother Africa, she wishes to contribute to Africa's development. Thank you, Your Excellency. I now have the privilege to invite Your Royal Highness King Bongani III of the Kingdom of Mpumalanga. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Your Excellency, President, members of the African Parliament, ambassadors, dignitaries, His Excellencies, ambassadors, protocol observed. His Excellency, President of the Parliament of the continent, we want to personally thank you for giving us this opportunity to come and give a message of support. Indeed, you are a true son of the soil, a true son of this continent. We are so humbled to be here. Humbled because you said today, let us invite the traditional leadership of this continent. Thank you very much for that initiative. God will bless you for that. My name is Chancellor Emeritus King Bongani III of Embo Kingdom of Africa. The kingdom dates back in memorial before Christ's existence. My forefathers originate from Central Africa, Congo, in the place called Douala before it was demarcated by the Berlin Conference. I mean Bismarck and them. As a proud son of that area, it is today referred as Cameroon. The Embo Kingdom represents unity. It represents origin. It represents the cradle of humankind, where the mankind originate from. We represent the ancient civilization of this continent, the uncontaminated kingdom of this continent. We are indeed the continental kingdom. We came with blessings to this gathering. We came to endorse the good things that are being done here. As the representative of our ancestors, the traditional leadership that is not created by colonialism, but created by God Himself. As a reminder of our colonial history, during the Conference of Berlin in 1884-1885, Africa was carved up between the European colonial powers, defining boundaries that are largely intact with today's post-colonial states. On the 5th August 1890, the British and the French concluded an agreement to clarify boundary between French West Africa and what will become Nigeria. And boundaries was agreed along in the line from, say, on the Niger to Barua on the Lake Chad by leaving the Sokoto Caliphate in the British sphere. Parfait Louis Motel was given charge of the expedition to discover where this line actually ran. On 9 April 1892, he reached Kukawa on the shore of the lake. Over the next 20 years, a large part of Chad Basin was incorporated by the treaty and by force into French West Africa. On the 2nd June 1909, the Wadi capital Abache was occupied by the French. The remainder of the Basin was divided by the British in Nigeria, who took Kanu in 1903, and the Germans in Cameroon. The countries of Basin regained their independence between 1956 and 1962, but retained the colonial administrative boundaries. My fellow compatriots, we need to decamp from our colonial past. We need to reclaim our independence, our freedom. Let us stop being used by our colonial masters for their own benefits. We cannot manage, we can manage our own. We can work together with our brothers and sisters in the diaspora. We can create our own economy in Africa. We can create our own stock exchange in pricing our own commodities. We don't need the London Stock Exchange to determine the price of gold for us. We can create our own destiny. We are a family. We need to work together regardless of our differences. We are born of one person. We cannot allow ourselves to be divided by the colonial masters. We cannot at this juncture to be caught in the web of our former colonial masters. We are the owners of the continent. Let us assist our brothers and sisters, those who could not be educated like ourselves. Let each other teach one. Let the minerals of our continent be the one that contribute in changing the lifestyles of our people. Our God entrusted us with these minerals to share amongst ourselves, to assist the poor of the poorest. How can custodians be dependent of people who were not entrusted with the continent and the minerals? How much of natural resources are we having in this continent? Let us fight against poverty. Let us fight against unemployment in our continent. Let us have energy in our continent. We have to implement the vision of African Union of 2063, not tomorrow, but now. How can we allow ourselves to be the lackeys of the non-existence? We have allowed ourselves to be the hewers of the wood, the drawers of water in the land of our forefathers, because our selfishness, because of our allegiances to our former colonial masters. We wake up, my people. Time is not on our side. Time is against us. These demons of tribalism, these demons of racialism, these aberrations of our people, the animosity that exists between our nations, our continent must be buried and forgotten. It has shed amongst ourselves sufficient blood. We are one people. These divisions, these jealousies are cause of all our woes and of all our backwardness and ignorance. These Afrophobic violences must stop with immediate effect. We are a shame to the world. Fools celebrate when they see us fighting amongst ourselves. We are a disgrace to our forefathers. We are a disgrace to our gods. What a shame, our fellow countrymen and women. Indeed, we are for killing each other. I wonder, how do you feel when you are sitting at home after you have killed your own brother and sister? We also need to protect our children from wrong things, especially our young girls, from these bogus initiation schools, from these criminals. It should not also be done under the name of the traditions. Traditional leaders totally distance itself from all those things that are under the pretext of traditional leadership. These people who are portraying or parading themselves as the people who are representing tradition, who are killing our young girls, today it must stop. Today it must stop. It is enough. It is enough. Also, traditional initiation schools should find a way to work with the current Western clinics and hospitals to minimize the death in our communities. Also, our youth to be taken care of by creating programs, opportunities that will change their lives. Oh, Africa, what has gone wrong with you? Why do you have to kill your own innocent children? Why do you have to kill your own young girls? Oh, Africa, history will judge you. Our forefathers will judge you for not doing the right thing. Our people have entrusted you with their destiny. Our continent needs you at this time. Africa needs you at this time. Unity, unity, unity amongst Africans is paramount. Let us rally around the flag of unity in our continent. Let us shame the devil and unite. In conclusion, I want to make this recommendation to the land of the South, that is South Africa. The recommendation is as follows. We think as the Embo Kingdom that Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma will make a good president of the ANC and of South Africa with the immense continent. South Africa will strive with a leadership, and the land will be brought back to the owners of this of this country called South Africa. It is high time that a woman must lead Africa, and it is high time that a woman must lead South Africa. Time is now. We, as the Embo Kingdom, we urge the people of this continent, together with our brothers and sisters in the diaspora, to unite spiritually and traditionally, culturally, to forge a nation of Africa. But before I leave, as I'm concluding, we have a gesture as the Africa or the kingdom of the continent. We want to bestow, as I said initially, for those who are under the colonial rule, for those who are under the spell of the colonial masters. We are a kingdom that has nothing to do with colonialism. We want to bestow a title to the president, and that title is going to be called the Paramount Chief of Africa. I thank you.
Come here, right? Are they bringing it?
With the powers given to me by my ancestors of the Embo Kingdom that originates from Central Africa, originates from the Congo, originates from Cameroon, I then bestow the title and I give him the stick to fight those who wants to stop him from the war against poverty, against unemployment in the continent. Thank you very much.
Bayete! Bayete! Bayete Pungan! Bayete Ntan! Bayete lang albalel! Bayete!
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup, Sama.
Thank you very much, Your Royal Highness. Thank you very much for your kind words. Africa does indeed need our traditional leaders. Let me
I'm on your left, this side. My name is Floyd from South Africa.
Donc je donne la parole à la dernière.
I'm calling for your attention, President, please.
Please, dear colleague, is the opening session.
An opening session, but I think what has just happened there is profoundly out of order.
Please, dear colleague, is the opening. The guest of honor is around. Please, you can arise your point of order tomorrow.
It's totally out of order for people to take advantage of that platform and spread factional politics of the ANC. This is not.
Thank you.
This is a platform that must be respected. It must not be abused by people who take advantage of this particular platform. Even the kingship which is being spoken about here, we do not know about it in South Africa. And you are accepting some honors from people who do not know anything about. So really we must.
Thank you very much,
not
dear
be taken
colleague.
advantage of, please.
Thank you very much, dear colleague. And now allow me to give the floor to His Excellency Honorable Marianne, Speaker of the Gambia. Madam Speaker, you have the floor.
Honorable Mr. President of the Pan-African Parliament, honorable members of the Bureau, honorable members of Parliament, members of the Diplomatic Corps, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I first of all wish to register my profound thanks and gratitude to the Honorable President of the Pan-African Parliament for inviting me to this very important forum. I also wish to seize this opportunity to thank all your governments most profusely for standing by the Gambian people during our political impasse. I also bring you warm greetings from the people of the Gambia, of the New Gambia, and the President of the Republic of the Gambia, His Excellency, Mr. Adama Barrow. The people of the Gambia are resolute in defending and developing the newfound freedom and democracy, with support, of course, from the international community. We in the Gambia have taken our country back from dictatorship of 22 years, and we are creating the conditions for the consideration of the principles of good governance and the rule of law. Mr. President and honorable members, I am deeply delighted to be in this Pan-African environment to address a distinguished group of parliamentarians from all over Africa and indeed the world on the theme, harnessing the democratic dividend by investment in the youth. I have to say that the theme resonated across the continent since the 33rd ordinary session of the Permanent Representatives Committee, that is the PRC of the African Union, selected it as its overarching theme. Here we are at the Pan-African Parliament to bring a parliamentary perspective to bear on the same issue. If we get it right in terms of strategies and investments and resource allocation, we will be putting our countries and the entire continent on the right trajectory for sustainable development. This is not only pertinent, but very crucial to the peace, stability, and security of our member countries. However, it is obvious that our point of departure to harnessing the demographic dividend through the investment in youths is to take concrete steps to address the critical challenges that confront our continent. Such challenges include, amongst others, food insecurity, when we have the arable land and millions of able-bodied youths, over-reliance on commodity exports, particularly extractives, the debt burden, non-inclusive jobless youths, growth rather, that leaves many people behind, most of them able-bodied youths, underemployment and unemployment, infrastructure deficit, inadequate energy supplies for transformation, lack of value addition to primary product, weak institutional capacity, the youth bulge, of course, tariff and non-tariff barriers to trade, environmental challenge, which I think is very important, governance, and of course, leadership challenge. And as I said, the list goes on and on and on. Mr. President and honorable members, this convergence comes at a time when private-public partnerships are rapidly gaining ground. I believe the time has now come to explore a strong public-private sector partnership framework for development. The youths in many countries are distressed and in many cases desperate to improve their conditions of living. We in the Gambia and other West African countries around us have paid a heavy price through the so-called backway migration of our youths to Europe in search of greener pastures. Our youths risk their lives through the harsh, inhumane climatic conditions of the Sahara Desert and rough seas of the Mediterranean in a desperate attempt to find new lives in Europe. Illegal migration has taken a huge toll on certain communities in rural Gambia and is beginning to have a destabilizing effect on community activities and household income. The migration patterns witnessed in recent years could be considered as a failure of our governments to create the enabling environment for the emergence of small and medium-sized enterprises that can employ young people. It is also a failure of leadership to live up to the needs and aspirations of the youths to develop their full potentials. Mr. President and honorable members, according to the 2013 census figures of the Gambia, the population within the age bracket of 15 to 35 years account for over 40% of the country's population. There is evidence to suggest that many are unskilled and mostly unemployed or underemployed. Others are among the working poor due to the lack of decent jobs. This growing youthful population raises many challenges for overall national development, not only for the Gambia, but the continent as a whole. This, in quotes, youth bulge is waiting to be harnessed in the Gambia and across the continent to generate positive development outcomes such as higher productivity, faster economic growth linked to greater employment opportunities, effective entrepreneurship, higher productivity, and increased gross domestic product. A holistic, comprehensive approach is what is needed. Some are for national governments to address, but others will need the intervention of non-state actors, particularly the private sector, working in close collaboration with the public sector. In the case of the Gambia, we have started to register some progress in the involvement of youths in the governance domain. This is evidenced by the 65% membership of the current parliament of the Gambia being of youthful age after the ushering in of a new dispensation that followed 22 years of brutal dictatorship in the Gambia. Mr. President and honorable members, what Africa needs today is growth that is broad-based, inclusive, and sustainable. By all accounts, there is growth, and indeed a growth momentum in some African countries. This growth momentum, however, can be classified only as a jobless growth that has not resulted in significant transformation, and transformation is what Africa needs at this point in time in order to be able to harness the demographic dividend. Such transformation involves creating the conditions for agricultural development and creating the conditions for agro-industries and small and medium-sized enterprises that drive sustainable development. Although foreign assistance is essential for engendering the conditions for such transformation, it should equally be emphasized that the continent cannot depend on the rest of the world for financing its development. It should depend more on domestic savings that can be the launchpad for industrialization. The private sector is therefore the driving force that can trigger the necessary transformation that can result in meaningful poverty reduction that benefits the youth constituency, if I may call it that. The role of population dynamics in socio-economic development is evident. Unleashing the full potential of the youth population in Africa to boost this development is critical for reaping the transformational benefits that come with the demographic dividend. On the policy front, national governments need to free up all the bottlenecks that constrain growth. The formulation of appropriate regulatory and legal frameworks of national level aligned to the regional economic community dispensation is also very crucial. Countries need strong government stimulus for the private sector to engage further and deeper. To that end, honorable members, we need to get the fiscal balance right, get the interest rates regime right to allow breathing space for the economy and reduce the cost of doing business. But what also matters is government commitment to partnering with the private sector within the framework of a new growth and development model to close the infrastructure gap, address the energy deficit, boost investor confidence in emerging regional opportunities, spur the diversification of national and regional economies, support technological leapfrogging, etc., to catch up with stronger economies. It also involves the building of human capital through education that is transformative, the development of entrepreneurial skills as part of the youth empowerment initiatives, a healthy youth population that is technology savvy and working in a good governance environment and engaging constructively for socio-economic transformation. Mr. President and honorable members, access to productive resources by certain social groups, that is the youths, women, and the poor in general, is a challenge. The private sector could provide affordable finance for small businesses and young entrepreneurs, facilitate the access to savings and credit, support institutions that use microfinance as a development tool to empower women and youths to engage in meaningful income-generating activities. Financial inclusion is crucial for youth, for growth and poverty reduction. There is an obvious rise in financial inclusion, but the fact remains that it is still not deep enough and may not benefit the youth owing to the difficulty to provide collateral to access development loans and credit facilities. Mr. President and honorable members, private enterprises create wealth and jobs through their core business activities. By financing human resource development and management systems, the private sector acts upstream to make available the job market, highly qualified, well-trained individuals, mainly youths, who can quickly add value to products and services. Public-private enterprise partnerships can therefore help transform the continent. It is a good lever for raising the quantum of resources needed for financing the huge infrastructural projects in the continent. Joint public-private ventures and partnerships between foreign and domestic entrepreneurs can spur the continent's industrial transformation. We must be bold and innovative in finding ways to improving the manufacturing sector so as to boost the employment potentials and opportunities for the youthful population. If African countries are to embark on a bold transformation driven by massive industrialization to address youth employment or underemployment, the private sector must take a leading role in that with innovative product offerings. But tertiary institutions will also ensure that there is a match between the needs of the job market and the curriculum that is developed to build the capacity for the youths. Mr. President and honorable members, lack of physical infrastructure is a major obstacle to the development of Africa's private sector and the socio-economic transformation of the continent. African markets are still largely inaccessible because of poor infrastructure and connectivity. The Program for Infrastructure Development in Africa, PIDA, for instance, provides the strategic framework and priority projects for Africa's infrastructure connectivity and integration. The focus on regional infrastructure and building value chains along transportation corridors that employ young people. We have to ensure that we invest in the human capacity of our youths to be the engineers and skilled workers that build the continent. To this effect, there is need to adopt a multinational and multifaceted investment in youth empowerment through viable and relevant educational policies that address the specific needs of our individual countries and the continent as a whole. In conclusion, Mr. President and honorable members, let me state that the future of the African continent is not written anywhere. It is open and up for grabs and depends largely on what we do in the present. The strategic choices that we make in agriculture, manufacturing, renewable energy sources, governance, investments on the youth, socio-economic transformation, social protection, which I think is very important, the involvement of the diaspora in national development, the consultation among the state and non-state actors, and the careful sequences and coordination of reforms. We have to be proactive by preparing for expected changes. But better still, we should be proactive by provoking the desired changes that can lead to development with a human face, with the public, private, and NGO sectors working hand in glove to achieve sustainable development results that benefit young people. In anticipating future development outcomes, we need to identify synergies that will trigger youth for shared prosperity. We see higher saving rates that the private sector can leverage and one which stakeholder groups can harness to benefit the youth. Honorable President, I also want to appeal to my honorable colleagues for us to in our coordination, links, and establish a platform for information and experience sharing. Through this, we must equally strengthen the application of our national and international instruments to ensure that peace and stability is maintained in our individual countries, in the continent, and by extension, the world at large. Peace, anchored within the tenets of justice and the rule of law, is the cornerstone for the much-needed development of the African continent and the realization of a dream for a United States of Africa. Honorable President and colleagues, now is the time to act, and parliaments must take a more proactive role in this crusade. We cannot afford to fail, as we have no excuses or reasons to do so, because the challenges and bottlenecks can be surmounted and must be surmounted. On that note, I pray that Allah the Almighty bless us all and our efforts for peace, security, and progress in our continent and the world over. And I thank you all for your kind attention.
Caríssimos e respeitados, distinguished and respected members of this August Assembly of African Peoples, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, thanking you on your behalf for this very timely speech by the Honorable Speaker of the Gambian National Assembly. I want to announce that we have thus concluded the cycle of solidarity messages or statements that was part of this opening ceremony today. On the other hand, I would like to indulge
or ask your indulgence for you to stay in the room so that we go to the second part of our proceedings, which is the welcoming in this beautiful room of our guests of honor that will share with us their ideas at this session. So please stay in this room, and we will start the second part of our proceedings in a few minutes. We have thus concluded the first part. Thank you very much.
Your Excellencies, honorable members, distinguished guests, may we please pick our seats? The guest of honor arrives shortly. May everybody pick his seat to allow the guest of honor to arrive. So can I leave it? Can leave it behind? Yes. No. Can you go? Go. I need to make an announcement. I can't have you now. Okay. Honorable members, can you go, please? Honorable members, may we please rise? The arrival of the guest of honor, His Excellency, President Brahim Ghali of the Republic of Western Sahara. Guest of honor, representing the President of the Republic of Chad, His Excellency, the Speaker of the Republic of Chad, the Honorable Minister for the Department of International Relations of the Republic of South Africa, representing His Excellency, the President of the Republic of South Africa. May we now have the AU anthem. Please.
Excellence,
Your Excellency Brahim Ghali, President of the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic, His Excellency Mr. Idris Deby Itno, President of the Republic of Chad, represented by His Excellency Dr. Arun Kabadi, Speaker of the National Assembly of Chad, His Excellency Mr. Jacob Zuma, President of the Republic of South Africa, represented by Her Excellency Maite Nkwana Mashabane, Minister of International Relations and Cooperation. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, ambassadors, commissioners, and representatives of the international organizations accredited to South Africa. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, special guests, His Majesty the King from the Kingdom, Your Excellency, Vice President of the Pan-African Parliament, dear colleagues, members of the Pan-African Parliament. The Bureau of the Pan-African Parliament, members of Parliament, and all the staff of the Secretariat are particularly honored to be graced by the presence of His Excellency Brahim Ghali, President of the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic, His Excellency Idris Deby Itno, President of the Republic of Chad, represented here, and His Excellency Mr. Jacob Zuma, President of the Republic of South Africa, represented here. It's always a great honor to welcome in this House of Africa such illustrious personalities of the African continent who are fighting day after day to improve the lives of our citizens. Your Excellency, President of the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic, the elected members of Africa gathered here warmly welcome you to the seat of the Pan-African Parliament, a place where all Africans come together. And your presence and your vision of Africa will speak volumes for us. Your efforts for peace are well recognized, as no development is possible without peace. You will address this august assembly to share your vision of Africa for the period 2063. We are all ears, and we are very thankful for having traveled here despite your busy schedule. Your Excellency, President of the Republic of Chad, represented here by the Speaker of the National Assembly, President Idriss Déby Itno, President of the Republic of Chad, is a worthy son of the African continent who is sparing no efforts to strive for peace on our continent. We beg you to extend to the President of the Republic of Chad our thanks from the Pan-African Parliament for all the efforts he is making, paying the highest sacrifice as sons and daughters of Chad engaged in a ruthless struggle against terrorism, a plague of our time that spares no country. He is also the champion on issues of youth. The youth of Africa require sustainable solutions. If not, peace and security on our continent will not be achieved. This is compounded by the phenomenon of youth migration. Your Excellency, President of the Republic of South Africa, it is with great pleasure that we welcome you here today. You, strong politician, a man of action, a man of the people, a popular person. I will also inform you of this mystical tree that we have in equatorial Africa, in Cameroon. The name of the tree is Singam. Singam is a tree that grows in the equatorial forest. It is 300 centimeters thick, and it cannot fall. And it's only special people that receive this honor. Therefore, Honorable Minister, I would like you to transmit to His Excellency Jacob Zuma that is from now on called Singam of Africa. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is with great surprise that on 26 September 2017, while we were meeting in Washington to plead for the lifting of sanctions against Sudan, we learned of the promulgation of the migration decree by the U.S. government banning entry of Chadian citizens. While Chad is playing a major strategic role in the fight against violent extremism on Africa and Central Africa and the Sahel through the arrangement of the multilateral mixed task force, the G5, while it's making great sacrifices and invest financial, human, and logistic means in combating the sect Boko Haram in Central Africa and West Africa against jihadism. A decree that cannot be justified is compromising the morale of the worthy forces of the Chadian people and its government. And I cannot express the outbreak of solidarity caused by such a decision, which instead of galvanizing the prophets of evil, The Pan-African Parliament, through his president, took charge of this issue spontaneously during our visit to Washington, D.C. in putting this to the Congress of State and the Department of State of the U.S., pleading for the immediate lifting of this measure. Let me reiterate from this rostrum, platform par excellence of the aspirations of the people of Africa, the solidarity and the unwavering support of the Pan-African Parliament to the people and the government of Chad, a country that is making Africa proud, if not the whole world proud, in its commitment in combating terrorism, the scourge of the century. In line with the position of the African Commission, the Pan-African Parliament is requesting the American government to remove this decree in order to encourage the president of Chad, the people of Chad, and the people of Africa. Speaker of the Assembly, personal representative of the President of the Republic of Chad, this is the message of the Pan-African Parliament that we would like you to transmit to the head of state. His Majesty King Mungani III, during the Continental Conference of Yaoundé from 22 to 27 August, the participants in the conference as a whole resolved, given the political issues that are hampering integration of our continent since the 60s to present, that integration of our continent will be by the people holding traditional authority. This traditional authority, which in yesteryears marked Africa, given the great empires, Songo, Abome, the kingdom of the Ambani, should assert the traditions and cultures of our ancestor. So this is the functional integration that we want, taking into account the cultural and customary heritage of the continent. Your presence, Your Majesty, is the result of this new pathway chosen by the Pan-African Parliament in order to achieve this dreamt-of integration. Returning to the subject of our meeting, the theme adopted by the Assembly of Heads of State and Government during the 29th summit of the AU meeting in Addis Ababa, fully harnessing the demographic dividend through investments in youth, is our framework for our deliberations. Therefore, once again, on behalf of the Bureau of the Pan-African Parliament, on behalf of all the members of the Pan-African Parliament, on behalf of the Secretariat and my office, I would like to welcome and thank the South African authorities that are affording us all the facilities for the holding of our meeting. Your Excellency Minister, you can faithfully transmit the nomination we have made to your President in Singam. Singam does not fall. It doesn't rotten. It is never affected. And we believe that all these virtues make the South African president a man of courage. Once again, I would like to thank you for your kind attention. Long live Africa, long live the African Union. Thank you.
Sana. Obrigado. Gracias. Excellent, Monsieur le Chef d'État.
Excellency, heads of state, I would now, with great respect, call upon the esteemed Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, personal representative of the President of the Republic of South Africa, to deliver her statement. You have the floor.
Your Excellency, President of the Pan-African Honorable Parliament, Honorable Roger Ngondo Diang Bonjour. Your Excellency, President of the Sahrawi Arab Republic, Democratic Republic, Mr. Ibrahim Gali. Good morning, sir. Your Excellency, the Speaker of the Assembly of the Parliament of Chad, on behalf of our Excellency and friend, President of Chad, bonjour, Mr. President of Parliament, Speakers of national parliaments present here, Your Excellency, Honorable Ministers, Honorable Deputy Ministers, Excellencies, Ambassadors and High Commissioners, members of the Pan-African Parliament, members of the Diplomatic Corps, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I'm humbled to be afforded this opportunity on behalf of His Excellency Jacob Zuma, the President of the Republic of South Africa, to welcome you back home. Our home, your home. For if it was not for the struggles of the people of this continent, there would be no free South Africa. The evidence is for all to see. And maybe many, even in South Africa, have forgotten that the real South Africa is 23 years old, 23. But the spirit of Pan-Africanism of the people of South Africa and our region is 105 years old. The ruling party in this country that struggled for more than 80 years is or has just celebrated its 105th birthday in January this year. So when fellow African men, women, young people make a call to South Africa, we sometimes forget we are 23 years old and react as you expect of us, as if we are that great tree that is unshaken by its Pan-Africanism, like our president, as he's bestowed this honor. In South Africa, I would have said a baobab tree, but President of Parliament told me that tree is stronger than the baobab tree, and I will faithfully deliver the message. I said, welcome home to do what you do best. I also want to take this to extend a special word of welcome to His Excellency, President Ibrahim Gali, the President of the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic, to your second home, South Africa. Warm greetings, Your Excellency, from your brother and from all South Africa, from every province and every corner of this country. Your Excellencies, I would like to take this opportunity to congratulate the new members of the Pan-African Parliament and wish them well as they begin their tenure. Your fresh ideas, Excellencies, rich and varied skills will complement the experience of the honorable members who have been in the service of our people in this Pan-African Parliament for a while. The African Union requires strong organs in order to achieve political, economic integration in our lifetime and beyond. Your commitment to the functioning of this continental body is commended and highly appreciated. Mr. President, it is our collective responsibility to ensure that the Pan-African Parliament is beneficial to all the continent's people. South Africa, as the host seat for the past 13 years, will continue to create enabling and conducive environments for the successful holding of sessions of this Parliament of our people across the continent. This is not without challenges. As I said earlier on, you were there when we said we are products of our people's selfless struggles and the products of international solidarity. And there was no international solidarity and sacrifices that would have started with fellow Africans like you. So this is a young institution, 13 years old, in a 23-year-old country. So we are going to journey together and make this institution a success. Honorable members, Excellencies, Mr. President, South Africa remains committed to the strengthening of continental bodies. Its organs and mechanisms aimed at integration, sustainable development, attainment of peace and security is at the forefront of our objectives. We are committed to the goals we have set, in particular, as Your Excellency, Mr. President had said, harnessing our youth dividend, as we are a youthful continent. I have 5 of those types in my house, so I know what I am talking about. The only thing I keep reminding them is that they can be above 18 outside the home, but at home I'm older, so they need to walk straight inside my house. So they have been behaving well so far. But we can do them a favor and unleash their potential if we indeed, in line with our 7 aspirations that are embodied in the Agenda Africa 2063. Paramount to this is by silencing the gun by 2020. We will no longer have women and children carrying their belongings on their heads and running to nowhere. Enough is enough. While we have recorded some successful movement in a positive light in the past, more must be done in pursuit of our shared continental vision and the trajectory as encapsulated in our Agenda 2063. We therefore believe that the continued implementation of our regional and continental mechanisms and protocols should be guided by the aspirations espoused in Agenda 2063 through firm and unwavering commitments. Your Excellency, Mr. President, a few months ago I was sent to some meeting by His Excellency President Zuma to represent him. When I arrived there, there was some document circulating and it had a title, Marshall Africa, something, something. So I called the host into a corner and said, you know, we have a very good bilateral relations, but this one, I don't want to embarrass you in the main hall. I am going to loudly say we don't know this thing. We know Agenda Africa 2063. So that document disappeared because it was how we should be held to conduct our lives. I wasn't alone. I had the former Commissioner Maruping and a few others who said, Minister, you started, we'll support you. I said, no, let's start outside. Because typical of Africans, you can't start screaming in the room when you could have had an opportunity to say, this we don't know, outside. So we did that, and we promised that there will be no Marshall Africa anything, because we have the Africa we want encapsulated very well in Agenda 2063 with its 7 aspirations. We therefore believe that the continued implementation of our regional and continental mechanisms and protocols should be guided by aspirations espoused in this commitment we've made in Agenda 2063. The Pan-African Parliament is central in all these continental efforts and aspirations, and commitment shown by its members through their work cannot be overemphasized. Your Excellency, I am a former ambassador. I'm a former political activist. I'm a former ambassador. I'm a former provincial minister before I came to where I am standing. When I was sent to local government, I was asking myself, what have I done wrong? But I learned so much in 4 years that I couldn't have learned in a lifetime. Our people are their own liberators. I learned the usefulness of exchanging information on that which gets legislated in one assembly to the other. It goes a long, long way. This role you're playing of when you come back home, you share that which you learned from your brothers and sisters from other countries. No amount of this can fast track Agenda Africa 2063 than that. So in recognition of your work, I say I've done it before, I know it works. Model laws that we learn from each other and influence each other. This task you must never underestimate. With the example I was giving you, it was about local authorities and using model laws to move from one province to the next. Your Excellencies, honorable members, in recognition of the centrality of the role of the youth in our development and our theme. The Youth Fund was launched to assist in realism and actually finding this a realization in making sure that we get the Africa we want and that we harness our youth dividend. It has to start with us. This culture of starting something new, aspirational, and go around the world cap in hand, it doesn't make us very serious people. But if we say we want to harness the youth dividend and we equally launch a fund as Africans, makes us more respectable. And I applaud you for this initiative, Your Excellencies. The African Youth Forum has now also been established during our AU Summit and will be an annual event that focuses on youth participation in Africa's decision-making processes for the continent's development. In this regard, the AU has placed the youth at the center of Africa's future. Our youth in today's society at large should actively participate in our efforts to build a peaceful and prosperous continent. We are confident that the Pan-African Parliament will continue to on this policy objective, both in terms of Pan-African Parliament's substantive mandate and by providing opportunities to the youth in our continent. Our leaders have made a call for ratification of the revised Pan-African Parliament Protocol by all member states. The entry into force of the process will be an important step forward to strengthening of the Pan-African Parliament. The strengthening of our institutions must result in entrenchment of democracy, good governance, promote and protect human rights. There is no other uncle somewhere who's going to be doing this for us. We are going to do it the way we know how. Because all the uncles who were asking us to mimic them seem to be struggling. So, black men and black women, you are on your own. Mr. President, honorable members, it is heartening to note that Pan-African Parliament is making its own contribution to the sustainable development and of our continent. The outcomes of your recent conference on political and socio-economic integration of the African continent are most welcome and will add more impetus on the efforts aimed at achieving the goals of integration. It is not the first time that the Pan-African Parliament had conceived forums to deliberate and strengthen African positions on the issues of continental importance. It has done so previously in cooperation with other AU organs and AU member states individually and collectively focus on this. So development partners found us at work. They did not find us with cap in hand to start things for us. Civil society organizations, even in our own countries, business in Africa has been good recipients of what is good. We should call upon them that there will be no development without them. The academia cannot be writing theses about what is not going right in Africa while they're not helping us on what can be done right. As you are aware, Excellency, Africa's development agenda can only be achieved with a peaceful, stable, favorable conditions that we all strive for. South Africa reaffirms its commitment to peace and security on the continent. Our involvement in peacekeeping missions and contributions to efforts aimed at post-conflict reconstruction and development are evidence of the commitment to make and that we are making to achieve sustainable development on our continent. Pan-African Parliament is an instrument and an organ that enables us to ensure active citizenry and promote participatory democracy. Thus, active citizenry will not only assist us to realize Agenda 2063 vision, but will also go a long way in enabling us to achieve United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. After all, they were attained. 2030 Sustainable Development Goals were attained because Africa spoke with one voice, G77 joined in and spoke with one voice, then the world joined in and we unanimously adopted Sustainable Development Goals 2030. I wish to express my appreciation on behalf of the Sangam, our president, that Pan-African Parliament has recognized the central role of women and youth in search for the Africa we want. Mr. President, I am not a very young woman, but I have not come across any hungry man who, while looking for food, looks out for his father for something to eat. They all run to their mothers. So, because one hand cannot clap, two hands can clap even louder, and development can happen much faster if we release the potential of our young people in our respective countries. Let us continue to speak with one voice and say that a peaceful Africa is long overdue. I stand here before you as I conclude, Mr. President, assuring you that South Africa will do the best we can as we chair SADC, which we started in April, BRICS, as we start the beginning of this year. I've already received the chairship of the ministerial part from the minister from China. In October, we are chairing or hosting Indian Ocean Rim Association of Countries. We are still co-chair of FOCAC. We do all this in celebration of our foremost diplomat that we are celebrating the whole year here in South Africa, none other than Oliver Reginald Tambo. By the way, you are hosted by him as you sit around here, because if he was around, he'll be 100 years old on the 17th of October. Let me quote him just once on what he said at the Frelimo Pan-African Youth Conference, and I quote, "I think truly and lasting unity, as opposed to the unity we may seek at a given time for the achievement of a certain purpose, which is conceived on the basis of essential oneness of mankind based on what we basically can do as a common and deal with the challenges as common human problems. I close quote. He epitomized what true diplomacy is. I am because you are. So that's why I opened on behalf of the President that as we wish you well on this 5th ordinary session, remember that you not only claim South Africa as your own. Like the Zambian says, don't feel at home, be at home. I wish you a very successful 5th session and fruitful deliberations. Bonjour, asante sana, siyabonga, kialeboga. Have a pleasant day. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Madame.
Thank you very much, Madam Minister. Now I wish to give the floor to His Excellency Kabade, President of the Parliament of Chad and the representative of the President Idriss Déby Itno, the President of the Republic of Chad. You have the floor, sir. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Honorable Roger Nkodo Dang, the President of the Pan-African Parliament, His Excellency Brahim Ghali, President of the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic, and His Excellency the Minister of International Relations and representative of President Zuma, President of the Republic of South Africa, representative of NEPAD, Excellency Arikana Oshubare, Ambassador, representative of the African Union to the United States, Royal Highness King Bugani III Amahulubi Nation, Kingdom of Speaker of the National Assembly of the Gambia, High Commissioners, representatives of international organizations, regional and governmental organizations as well, honorable parliamentarians, distinguished guests, all protocols observed, ladies and gentlemen. His Excellency, the President of the Republic and Head of State, His Excellency Idriss Déby Itno, was invited by the President of the Pan-African Parliament to attend the solemn opening of the 3rd ordinary session. And he is very honored. He asked me to convey to you his apologies for not being able to attend this session because of his commitments. He asked me to represent him, to convey to you his brotherly greetings, and to deliver his message of hope for African Renaissance. And this is his speech. Excellency Brahim Ghali, President of the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic, Minister of International Relations and Cooperation of the Republic of South Africa, representing His Excellency President Jacob Zuma, President of the Republic of South Africa, honorable parliamentarians, distinguished guests, all protocols observed, ladies and gentlemen. This ordinary session of the Pan-African Parliament is taking place at a time when major challenges are facing Africa and becoming more complex. This imposes on us as leaders of Africa a collective effort to meet such challenges. We should recall that by establishing the African Union, the heads of state and government decided to move into a new phase of socio-economic development, cultural development, and security development in our continent. The aim is to involve people in the making of their own destiny and their own development. This is a phase in the creation of the United States of Africa that should enable us to pull together our intellectual and material resources in order to overcome the delay we have in all areas. The aim is to cut off the links of dependency, and this is making Africa a country of less influence in a world of trade interests and geostrategic dominations in the next years. The Pan-African Parliament represents our peoples. Our peoples who aspire, like other peoples in the world, for peace, security, and political stability, and for socio-economic prosperity. Our peoples have to be in solidarity, to speak in one single voice, to be respected in the world. As we cannot end the wars that we are facing at the moment, and when we can't produce a common front against terrorism and violent extremism by having the means to overcome the forces of evil in the Sahel, Somalia, Libya, and the Lake Chad Basin, when we look at the weakening of the Libyan state and the emergence of new hotbeds of political instability in areas that were stable. And when we see that African youths are dying in large numbers in the desert and in the Mediterranean in search for happiness in Europe and elsewhere, we have the feeling that we are going backward, and the hope we had in establishing the African Union to eradicate poverty, hunger, and security is not productive at all. Now, more than ever, the African Parliament should enable the continent to have the legal instrument and to move into action to achieve the proclaimed unity when the OAU was established in 1963 by the founding fathers of the OAU. It is high time that the African continent changes for the benefit of an economic and social integration at the regional and continental level by promoting the means of communication and by establishing criteria of convergence for harmonious socio-economic development and solid industrial development. We need to use our national potential to be able to create jobs, to reduce mass unemployment and stop these perilous adventures. The populations of the African continent, on the basis of serious reports, will reach 1.5 billion people by the year 2050, and most of these people are young. In the face of this demographic growth, all major challenges will be there for the African continent. And we need to have the necessary resources in order to face major concerns such as food self-sufficiency, education and training for young people, the fight against pandemics, and the specific issue of women and girl education, and the gender approach for political participation in our continent. Here we hail the initiative made to call for a conference of women parliamentarians to address the main theme of benefiting from the demographic dividend by investing in youths. And we believe that this theme is very judicious. There is no doubt that during your debate you'll be able to identify the solutions to eradicate the negative practices that impede the full liberation of women. There is also the weight of families in our national communities. Political rights are becoming again in our states, and we need to create an environment that is conducive to women partnership and access to loans to enable women to become actors of development and job creation, to enable women to fully play their role in our societies. We must create conditions that will reduce household and reproductive activities for a better family control and for better education, health, and schooling among girls. In the area of new technologies, communication and information, the digital divide is dividing countries. This divide is increasing by the day. It is on the basis of a common will and on the basis of a well-defined policy coordinated at the level of the African Union will be able to overcome this gap, and we can face the issue of cybernetics, cybercrime. As we indicated during the ceremony on the 10th anniversary of the Pan-African Parliament in 2014 here in Midrand, we need peace, security, and stability on the continent. We also need strong and efficient institutions to be able to show the perspectives and better organize African peoples to become masters of their destiny. Your ordinary session will consider the issues of peace and security in Africa and the political arrangements to establish and consolidate peace through prevention, through conflict prevention and settlement. You will also discuss the reports on the African, the APRM reports in relation to Chad. These three themes for your debate respond to our concerns in Africa, major concerns which are security, development and political stability. When these three major concerns are ensured, everything is possible on the basis of a daily work in the area of freedom, governance and democracy. We believe that it is high time we went beyond statements and proclamations to go into major actions to achieve the objectives of the Agenda 2060. We invite national parliaments, parliaments which have not done so, to ratify the protocol amended in June 2014 in Malabo to give the Pan-African Parliament more powers through His Excellency the President of the Republic and the Head of State Idriss Déby Itno, Chad, requested in a statement to the Pan-African Parliament that it could evolve to become a legislative parliament, which means major institutions with major prerogatives. We affirm the position of Chad today. Excellency Brahim Ghali, President of the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic, Minister of International Relations and Cooperation of the Republic of South Africa, representing His Excellency Mr. Jacob Zuma, President of the Republic of South Africa, honorable parliamentarians, distinguished guests, all protocols observed, ladies and gentlemen. My country is resolutely committed to the African cause and believes in its institutions. That's why we actively participate in fighting the negative forces that want to compromise the future of our continent. To this effect, it deployed its meager material and human resources, and many died in combating Boko Haram in the Chad Lake. We made sacrifices to restore peace and dignity among African peoples. You undoubtedly were surprised by the fact that Chad, which is at the forefront of combating terrorism in Sahel, was cited by the United States as a country directly or indirectly supporting terrorism. There were technical dysfunctionings by the American part, and this could have been corrected by within the framework of the relations to combat terrorism. This decision to forbid Chad citizens to go in the United States was made. This shows the relations of condescendence that this country has with our nations because of their underdevelopment. Our country is working hard to normalize its relations with the United States to avoid any misunderstanding when it comes to fighting against terrorism and violent terrorism in our continent. We wish to express our gratitude for the decision made, the clear decision made by the African Union Commission, a decision in which it indicated that it was concerned with the inclusion of Chad in the list, the American list on migration. The African Union referred to the role played by Chad to fight terrorism in Chad, North Mali, and the Sahel. We are we appreciate the initiative made by the ambassadors and the initiative made by our brother, the President of the Pan-African Parliament, Mr. Roger Nkodo Dang, to enable Chad to restore its respectable image following the American decision. The aim is to enable normal relations between Chad and the United States. Here, I would like to indicate that the Pan-African Parliament played a decisive role in lifting the sanctions imposed on Sudan, imposed by the United States of America. This clearly shows that the Pan-African Parliament, in its legislative form, as wished by the heads of state and government and the African peoples. In this form, Chad can, the Parliament can play an important role in looking for solutions to African problems. For this particular reason, it is very important to give the Pan-African Parliament the necessary legislative powers so that we can, so that it can speak in one voice on behalf of African peoples. What is happening, what happens to an African country today can happen to another African country tomorrow. Hence, the need to put in place a global strategy of negotiations with the other powers and non-African organizations in accordance with the motto of the Pan-African Parliament, One Africa, One Voice. This clarification After making this clarification, we wish the ordinary session of the Pan-African Parliament full success. We also wish to express our profound gratitude to the government of South Africa for the lavish welcome accorded to our delegation in this beautiful country. Long live African Union, long live Africa United. Thank you very much for your attention.
Merci, Excellence.
I thank you, Excellency. Your message was well received. And now I have the honor and the privilege to kindly invite His Excellency Ibrahim Ghali, President of the Arab Sahrawi Democratic Republic, to present his message. In the name of Allah, Honorable Roger Nkodo-Dang, President of the Pan-African Parliament, Honorable Haroun Kabadi, President of the Chadian Parliament and representative of His Excellency President Idriss Déby, Her Excellency Ms. Maïti Nkoana Mashabane, Minister of International Relations and Cooperation of the Republic of South Africa, representative of His Excellency President Jacob Zuma, Honorable Vice Presidents of the Pan-African Parliament, honorable members of the Pan-African Parliament, Your Excellencies, ambassadors accredited to the Republic of South Africa, Your Excellency Mr. Amadi, former President of the Pan-African Parliament, ladies and gentlemen, representatives of the African Union. I have the honor to represent the government and the people of the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic as a guest of honor at the 5th Ordinary Session of the 4th Legislature of the Pan-African Parliament. I'm very pleased to accept your kind invitation, Mr. President, and my presence within this great and august African institution that embodies the hopes and aspirations of our peoples, of the peoples of our continent, for unity and integration. It is a good opportunity for us to extend to you all our warmest congratulations on the tremendous strides that the Pan-African Parliament has made and for the steady development that it has been achieving in all areas. We are all confident that these successes will culminate in the PAP's exercise of full and binding powers as a continental legislative institution. In this vein, and on this occasion, I would like to point out that the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic that assumes vice presidency in this institution has repeatedly expressed its support for this orientation, which is reflected in its prompt signing and ratification of the new protocol of the Pan-African Parliament. I would like to take this opportunity to urge all African countries to follow suit as soon as possible. It is also worth mentioning the special importance that is granted by the Pan-African Parliament to the issues of Africa in a view of its responsibility as representative of the African people and their aspirations in the context of its informed follow-up of the programs, plans, and strategies drawn up by our continental organization. The African Union, just as stipulated by Agenda 2063. In this regard, I would like to commend the role and contribution of the Sahrawi Parliament that has ratified most of the treaties and protocols adopted by our continental organization, the African Union. Mr. President, Your Excellency, representative of the President of Chad, Your Excellency, Minister, ladies and gentlemen, the theme of this session, harnessing the demographic dividend through investment in the youth, reflects the great importance that the Pan-African Parliament attaches to this complex and multi-dimensional issue, as it relates to urgent concerns and crucial issues for our peoples and countries, foremost of which is the achievement of effective and sustainable human, economic, and social development. As regards the demographic dividend in Africa, it entails necessarily talking about the youth, as the majority of Africa's population belongs to this group. Talking about the youth is also talking about the future, about hope, and about steady transformation and reinvigorated force. All these are elements that require continuous guidance and follow-up to steer the process in the right direction and to achieve the desired results in the interest of the youth and society in general. It is in this spirit that youth have become a constant component in the policies and programs of the Sahrawi government. Through its focus on training and education, with a view to forming educated, enlightened, and responsible generations, open to the world, equipped with modern technology, and aware of the challenges facing our societies. Generations that are capable of achieving a qualitative leap forward in the betterment of our peoples and countries in all areas based on peace, security, stability, prosperity, and progress. Ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, the conflict between the two countries, the Sahrawi Republic and Morocco, remains a stain and a disgrace in the history of Africa and the world, because it represents an enduring and unjustified prolongation of colonialism, whose most recent case has not been brought to an end. The Kingdom of Morocco has been occupying illegally and militarily since the 31st of October 1975 parts of the territory of the Sahrawi Republic, in flagrant violation of one of the principles of the African Union Constitutive Act, namely the respect of the borders that have been inherited from independence, as well as the UN Charter and its historic resolution 1514. The appalling violations of human rights perpetrated in the occupied parts against Sahrawis who live under blockade, and the massive looting and plunder of the Sahrawi natural resources by Morocco have recently taken on serious dimensions. A case in point is the trial of Sahrawi civilians before a Moroccan military court, as was the case of Gdim Izik prisoners who later were sentenced to a mock civil court to the same cruel military sentences, including life imprisonment. As a collective punishment against them, the prisoners were unlawfully and unethically deported to several Moroccan prisons away from their homeland and their families, simply because they are committed to defending the legitimate rights of their people to freedom, dignity, and independence. On this occasion, we reiterate our call once again on the United Nations, the African Union, the Pan-African Parliament, and all members of the international community to act urgently to ensure the release of the Gdim Izik prisoners and all the Sahrawi political prisoners held in Moroccan jails. Ladies and gentlemen, the definitive solution to the conflict between the Sahrawi Republic and the Kingdom of Morocco can only be achieved through the strict implementation of the precepts of international legality enshrined in the UN Charter and resolutions and the AU Constitutive Act, foremost of which is the granting of independence to colonial peoples and countries. We would like you to bear witness to our firm commitment and sincere desire to achieve this just, urgent, and lasting solution in order to end the last manifestations of colonialism in Africa and to achieve peace, stability, good neighborliness, and cooperation in our region, Africa, and the world. We commend Africa's commitment through the decisions of the African Union and the Pan-African Parliament to defend the sacred principles and rights of its peoples to freedom and emancipation, and to supporting the just struggle of the Sahrawi people for restoring the sovereignty of their nation over their entire national territory. In this context, we would like to note that the African Union has unanimously accepted the admission of the Kingdom of Morocco to our continental organization, side by side with its sister and neighbor country, the Sahrawi Republic, based on the Kingdom's ratification of the AU Constitutive Act and its explicit commitment to the implementation of its provisions. Unfortunately, earlier concerns and warnings, as well as facts, have shown that Morocco's joining the AU was prompted by less sincere willingness to contribute to the construction of the African edifice than an undeclared intention, which reveals that Morocco calls reform from within is just a deliberate attempt to sabotage from within. Examples abound in this regard. The behavior exhibited by Moroccan diplomacy in Dakar, Malabo, Maputo, and Cairo recently practically reveal Morocco's disregard of the decisions of the African Union in general, and particularly those related to the mechanisms regulating the Union's dealing with its international partners as one bloc representing all member states as reflected in its memorable slogan, One Africa, One Voice. There is no doubt that Africa will show no leniency whatsoever towards anyone that seeks to undermine the contract that binds its countries around the Constitutive Act of the Union. Africa, through its leaders and peoples, knows well that any compromise or infringement upon these foundations would be a betrayal of the founding fathers and the principles on which the continental organization has been founded, and a serious threat to its unity, security, stability, and its standing in the world. Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, today we are all guests of South Africa's. On our behalf, on your behalf, I would like to express our deep thanks and gratitude to this friendly and brotherly country, the land of Nelson Mandela and Oliver Tambo, symbols of African struggle for liberation, emancipation, coexistence, and peace. Madam Honorable Minister, thank you very much. And through you, very special thanks and gratitude to His Excellency the President and the people of South Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, today South Africa is also home to the Pan-African Parliament, a democratic institution that represents a source of pride for all Africans. We are confident that the Pan-African Parliament is now qualified to carry out all the important responsibilities entrusted to it. You have all our support and best wishes for success to this session and to all the proceedings of this organization. One Africa, one voice. Long live Africa, united and strong. Long live to African solidarity. Thank you, and peace be upon you. Thank you for your kind attention.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Excellency President of the Republic. Mr. Clark, any announcements? Do you have any announcements? You have the floor.
Thank you, Honorable President. Your Excellencies, the guests of honor, Your Excellencies, members of the Pan-African Parliament, and distinguished invited guests. We have three announcements. The first announcement is that when this meeting is adjourned, we are going to have a photo session. And the photo session will be to your right as you go out the main entrance. Soon after the photo session, we will immediately proceed for lunch in honor of their excellencies, our distinguished guests of honor. The lunch will take place at the Gallagher Center immediately after the photo session. The last announcement is in relation to meetings scheduled for the honorable members of the Pan-African Parliament this afternoon. We're having regional caucus meetings. The West African caucus will meet in this room from 2:30 to 4 o'clock. The Southern African caucus will meet in room 3, also from 2:30 to 4 o'clock. The East African caucus will meet in room 2. The Central African Caucus will meet in room 4, and the North African Caucus will meet in room 5. At 4 o'clock, there will be a joint meeting of CAPA and the Bureau in the presidential boardroom. 4 o'clock for 1.5 hours. Thank you very much, Honorable President. Those are the announcements.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Secrétaire Général.
Thank you very much, Mr. Clark. Excellency, Mr. President of the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic, Excellency, Madam Minister for International Cooperation, personal representative of His Excellency President Zuma, Excellency Harun Kabadi, Speaker of the National Assembly of Chad. The Pan-African Parliament is very honored by the presence of your excellencies. We would like to convey to you, in my personal name, our sincere thanks. You're always welcome, and we do really rejoice about the positions that you have expressed in order for our parliament to become a legislative parliament, in order to continue defending the interests of Africa. Having said that, we adjourn our proceedings while requesting the session is adjourned and will resume at 2:30. Thank you.